Bullet Club for life.
What's up, Bullet Club? This is Bullet Club Gaming 91 back with another video. Now, this is going to be one of those videos where you're either going to love me or you're going to hate me. I'm going to talk about this whole modern movement, the whole reason why Assassin's Creed Shadows failed, and why it became the downfall of Ubisoft. And I'm going to touch on a lot of the gamer, the streamer, and the beliefs that have been going on within the last week about the industry as a whole. Tim the Tatman, myself, and many other gamers have come to the realization that given our age at 30 and above, that when we were growing up and a lot of the memories we have with games in the past, the games were not made the way they are today. And that's become clear and evident. And the quote we've all been using is, when we were growing up, games were made with passion for the passionate. Today, games are made for profit by the profitable. Now, what I mean by that is these rich suits and stuff of that nature that got into the industry during the boom after the 90s and everything else, and Nintendo saving it. Yes, Super Mario Brothers saved the gaming industry in the 70s and the 80s with its arcade, Donkey Kong, Mario Bros, and then the Nintendo Entertainment System. That saved the gaming industry and allowed this boom and this position that we're in the year 2025 to take place and happen. But during that time period, you had developers, you had people that were in love with the industry, making games that they were passionate about for the passionate people. Today, you look at the industry and the acquisitions that have happened, like Activision Blizzard by Microsoft, Sony with Bungie, and everything else of the like. They're all projected just to make profitability for profitability's sake. You look at all of these games and the structure and the way they're made is they're all half-baked, released way too early, and at release, these games are all mid. Majority of these games don't even cross the 7 and 8 out of 10 barrier, yet they're being met with high praise. And not a single Western game that's been released in the last 3 to 4 years has gotten any type of praise or accolade. Yet you see games made in the East by China, by Korea, and by Japan, topping every single player list in every best of list. You have games like Black Myth Wukong, the first Berserker Kazan, Elden Ring's DLC. You just have so many games out there in the gamer space for single player and non-multiplayer. Then you have the multiplayer aspect with games like Marvel Rivals and these other games just completely taking over the industry. So where did that leave Ubisoft? In the West, they were so focused on being acclimated to the modern audience, which just does not exist. The modern audience is a fallacy. It's a fake agenda being pushed to everybody that's out there. The whole DEI, the whole ESG movement, it's all racially and politically motivated. And listen, I've been on record multiple times. Live and let live, and love who you love. Gamers were not politically motivated or politically driven until you came into our industry and started to ruin it. Same happened with the comic book industry. Same thing happened with the movie industry. Same thing happened with the television industry. And if you don't believe me, just look. As of recently, the FCC started an investigation into Disney and ABC and all their subsidiaries and all of their branches for their involvement in DEI and ESG agenda bias and basis havings. And that's just straight up fact. And whether you agree with Doge and President Trump or anything else that's going on or happening and taking place, you have to understand there's been a sway. Games like Life is Strange failing, and it used to be a niche of a niche for that modern audience, and it used to sell well. The most recent one has failed, caused the whole entire company to go down and be disbanded and shut down. You look at Concord, it was supposed to be Sony's savior. Their $500 million game. It was racially and DEI motivated. It completely and utterly failed. You have Suicide Kill the Justice League. Same situation and scenario. DEI and ESG motivated. And the champion of Sweet Baby Inc. in the SBI movement, it failed. You look at multitudes of games that have come out recently, and even movies. Most recent was Snow White, and a lot of Disney's other things. You even look what they're doing with Daredevil Born Again. That show had to be rewritten, rescripted, and reshot multiple times to be at least tolerable and even somewhat comparable in its current state to the previous Netflix iteration of Charlie Cox's Daredevil and Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin. And we're barely getting into that, and we're almost 7 episodes deep. You gotta understand that when we talk about that, we don't want Ubisoft to fail. We don't want Activision Blizzard to fail. We don't want these companies to fail. But it seems like they need to fail, and some sort of industry reset button needs to be hit. So that way, things like when you read headlines, 98% of PC gamers and older gamers prefer to play games that are 5 to 10 years older than buy modern video games. Yeah, part of it's because of our back catalogs are so large because of Steam sales, Epic Store sales, and good old games, which is GOG sales. Yeah, that's the thing. I have tens of thousands of games I've barely even put in hours into, literal 1 hour or more into, that I play when I have nothing else to play. But at the end of the day, I only find myself playing games that I enjoy or fit that my niche in what used to be the target and key demographic for video gaming. Games like the first Berserker Kazan has taken a stranglehold on me. It's a game I'm loving watch other people play and experience and play myself. Sure, you could say it's a stale trope of a Souls-like, an anime Souls-like, whatever else what have you. But at least the gameplay loop, the draw, and when it's firing on all cylinders, it's hitting each part of the brain that a lot of these other games strive and claim to have. And with Ubisoft making the bold claims that this is going to be the most historically accurate Assassin's Creed in history, that Yasuke was never a slave in Nobunaga's jester, and he was a high-ranking samurai, and trusting a crock, a literal white left liberal LGBTQ plus agenda bias having author who rewrote Japanese history and made this whole entire story for Yasuke that is completely fallacy, false, and fake beyond repair, that the Japanese government and the Japanese prime minister just shut this man down, had him get out of Japan, and is now threatening to sue Ubisoft for their falsifying of information and historical presence of Japanese culture and Japanese history. You have a problem. Naoi and Yasuke would be good characters. They would be fine if it was in any other game outside of Assassin's Creed with the claims that Ubisoft made. And Ubisoft also being about 12 years too late to the party when you have beautiful games like the Nioh 1 and 2. You have Sekiro. You have Ghost of Tsushima. You have Rise of Ronin. You have so many games that do this Japanese style and this samurai experience 20 times better than Ubisoft could have ever done, being 12 years too late to the game. And even if you look at modern games as it is right now, I have finished Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza with my family, and we're huge fans of the Yakuza franchise. This game gave us Pirate Assassin's Creed with a modern spin and was 20 times the game that anything Ubisoft has put out with Assassin's Creed recently. In playing it, at times I was frustrated. The story is pretty simple and things of that nature because it is a Yakuza spin-off game and it takes place in between 7 and Infinite Wealth, trying to get to that neat bow tie kind of open-ended situation that Infinite Wealth has. The story didn't grab me completely, but the gameplay loop, the upgrading my ship and abilities and doing everything else made me feel like I was playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag again for the first time ever. And I was experiencing Haytham Kenway's story leading into Assassin's Creed 3, where we go into Connor's story and his origin, how Haytham was that pirate, swashbuckling, crazy person during the pirate era into the American Revolution in 1776. You're not getting that with these games. Instead, you're having forced narrative, forced agenda, and forced same-sex relationships being at the forefront, yet they are optional. That's the problem. This is the canon story. This is the canon ending. If you do not play it XYZ way, you're a bad person. You're every ist and phobe that there is within every categorical margin that there is. Yet it's optional. You don't have to have Yasuke sleep with Nobunaga's brother. But it's canon. So if you're not playing the canon way, you're the problem. Naoi sleeping with this random villager girl. It's canon, but it's optional. These are the types of situations and problems that we're having with these games. And when it's statistically proven, and the biggest out-of-pocket news that made the most sense to me to come out recently was that Netflix gaming CEO stated that, why would we want to make console and PC games when the modern and next generation of game players are only going to want to play games on their phones and their tablets? And he's not wrong. That's where the generational gap and the divide is happening. These companies like Activision Blizzard and everything else are not being bought up for COD or for Destiny or whatever else. It's their ties to the Chinese mobile market that they're involved with. You look at Activision Blizzard, they own King. King is the maker of Candy Crush Saga, so on and so forth. Those games generate billions of dollars on a month-to-month basis to afford and allow the $500 million loss like Black Ops 6 to take a hit, or Warzone 2.0. They don't want these structural sound old ways, and that's the thing, is these newer people that are coming in want to abolish the old ways because they know the money is elsewhere. Another big thing is you look at Hasbro. They license and lease out Monopoly as a franchise. You look at Monopoly Go. In a 2.5 to a 1 month period, that game generates $5.2 billion in income revenue for people just rolling dice and clicking buttons. It's a button clicker simulator. But you look at a $500 million budget quadruple A game like Skull and Bone, it fails because you take out what makes being a pirate fun. Going and pillaging, destroying other people's ships, and getting in hand-to-hand, if not sword-to-sword, and ship-to-ship combat. Same thing happened with Assassin's Creed. And then you look at Marvel Rivals. It's made by Tencent China, and NetEase, and all these other companies, and it's quote-unquote an Overwatch clone. The game has more depth than that, but the fact that it has a healthy gameplay loop, they listen to their fan base, and they're putting in subsequent changes, patches, skins, and they're not leading with an agenda or a bias, it helps the game. There's another reason why Stellar Blade sold so well compared to other games that were out at the time. There's a reason why games like Black Myth Wukong sold so well compared to other games in it. I mean, for God's sake, I played Astrobot, we've beat Astrobot, and I enjoy Astrobot. But is it Game of the Year material over Black Myth Wukong? Absolutely not. And that's the way we're trending, is to where these either little tiny slice of life bits and piece games are the big sellers and either have a small budget and get praised to the moon because it's a Western success, or they become a $500 million budget flop. And no game like a first Berserker Kazan with a budget of $50 million or less, or a Stellar Blade with a budget of $25 million or less, isn't getting any praise, any awards. It's just being slammed for over-sexualizing and radicalizing male and female characters. You look at this new game, Enzoi, which is the new Sims killer. People are complaining and throwing massive fits in anger because the game is too heterosexual and too straight. Now, I get it. It's a human life simulator, if you want to call it that. You should be able to love who you love, date who you want to date, and everything else. But to give the game poor review scores because of the fact that it's too straight, too heterosexual, and another man and another man, or another man and another woman who identifies as a man can't kiss, you're going to give the game a low score and call it trash and slander it. What kind of world do we live in? There's a reason why people want to play and stream games like Schedule 1, where it's just GTA with cartoon characters. They love it. Yet a game like Assassin's Creed Shadows scores a 6 or 7 out of 10 with many people. And Cone Carnage and other people are having to make apology videos because they didn't pick a side. They're too neutral on the game. You're either with us or you're against us. Oh, you either praise Ubisoft or you hate Ubisoft. Ubisoft has put out failure after failure with player. And these games are mid at best. 6 out of 7, 7 out of 8 if you're lucky. You have Skull and Bone, you have Star Wars Outlaws, and now you have X Defiant and Assassin's Creed Shadows. When is it going to stop? Us as gamers know that we'd rather listen to a streamer or a gamer who puts in the time and gives an honest review over legacy media because of their agenda and their biases. And furthermore, when you're looking at these games and what's in them, the way they're promoting, advertising, and marketing them, as I referenced, this is canon, but it's optional. If you don't play the canon route, you're the problem. This is the stuff that needs to change. And for those of you people that are out there saying that Steam numbers, Steam charts, and everything else don't matter, they do. Almost every single gamer has a low budget to mid-tier PC in their home that they use to game on, or as a gaming option. And when a game doesn't do well on Steam, because most companies don't release their financial records anymore, or their player earnings, not their player numbers. Ubisoft has 3 million players playing Assassin's Creed Shadows, but where are the financial numbers? All we know is what Japan and Europe put out together of 17,500 and some. So obviously the game's not selling. And when it peaks at 64,000 or less on Steam, that's a clear indicator of the player count. Yet you have games like Black Myth Wukong breaking 2 million, Power World breaking 10, 20 million, Marvel Rivals breaking 10, 20 million, and everything else of the like. There are clear path and clear indicators that tell you what the game is, how the game is, and who should be trusted. But at the end of the day, we just want games to be games. Again, we want escapism to be escapism, and to leave our political, social, and economical beliefs at the door when we enter a world of fantasy, a world of sports, medieval times, whatever world that we enter, we want the games to be games once more. And that's why we're celebrating the downfall of these companies and their restructuring and they're selling off to Tencent China and so on and so forth. Because the gaming industry needs a hard reset. And we need to break the mold in the ideology that the modern audience exists when it never has and it never will. But hey, those are just my personal thoughts here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. And as always, Kenny, take us home.
Goodbye, mwah, and good night, bang.
I'm out, Bullet Club, and I'll catch you in the next video. Be safe, everybody.